Hi, I'm Dan Q, and you're listening to a podcast that nobody ever asked for, exclusively about things that only I find interesting. Today, I'll be talking about Cirrothauma Murrayi, as usual, as a blog post to accompany this episode, which you'll find a link to wherever you listen to your podcasts, or you can look me up at danq.me. So, as you may know, Wikipedia turns 25 this year, and a part of the celebrations is that they are challenging people to read 25 different Wikipedia articles on 25 consecutive days. So that's what I've been doing. I've been randomly selecting an article each day, and if it's interesting enough, I've written a blog post about it, and even recorded a podcast episode like this one. Today, my random article was Cirrothauma. And that led me to today's topic, Cirrothauma Murrayi. Cirrothauma Murrayi. My random landing page today is for a genus for which there's only a single species. So I hopped over to the species page, and what a species. I was immediately greeted by a picture of this species drawn by the first biologist to describe it in 1910, and it looks like an alien. It's clearly an octopus, but with a webbed skirt, strange prongs coming out of its tentacles, tiny eyes, and enormous butterfly-shaped ear-like fins sticking out of the side of its head. This is the blind cirrot octopus, Cirrothauma Murrayi, a species that's found beneath oceans all over the world, but at such a depth that they're not well understood. We're not even sure whether the specimens that we have studied represent a single species or two separate species. The Latin name comes from oceanographer John Murray, best known for his Challenger expedition of 1872 to 1876, but whose 4-month North Atlantic oceanographic expedition in 1910, which he self-funded, was the one that found this unusual species for the first time. It was described by another member of his crew, Carl Chun, whose previous claim to fame had been the discovery of the vampire squid 7 years earlier, which is also an amazingly alien-looking creature. The vampire squid is like its own spectacular thing. Did you know the vampire squid can turn itself inside out to evade predators, exposing the inner surface of its spiked tentacles, and it can spit glow-in-the-dark mucus to dazzle an attacker? The thing that makes the blind cirrot octopus a cirrot octopus is those fins on its head. Cirrots have one of the two major families of octopods. They're the ones that have a pair of mini strands dangling off each sucker on their tentacles and don't have an ink sac. The other thing about cirrot octopods is that they're notoriously fragile, and when we've pulled them up for research purposes, they're often in such poor condition that we could barely work out what they are at all, which is doubly true for deep dwellers like the blind cirrot octopus. By the way, podcast listeners, you may notice that I'm using the plural octopods, which I feel should be the correct plural for octopus. I will accept octopuses, that's fine too. I choose octopods because it follows the Greek in which they're named. Octopus means 8 foot, and so I'm pluralizing it as 8 feet, which isn't terribly correct. Maybe octopuses is better. However, I do draw the line at octopi. The word is not Latin, and even if it were, it's a countable noun, so it shouldn't be pluralized like that. Octopus, octopuses, octopods, not octopi. Okay, I described this octopus. I've been distracted now. The Cirrothauma Murrayi as being the blind cirrot octopus. Blind. Well, it's got eyes, but those eyes don't have lenses. As a result, this octopus is probably able to tell light from dark, but probably can't make out the particular shapes of objects. It is, functionally in some ways, blind. This is, interestingly, a great example, Contrary to claims of irreducible complexity in the eye by proponents of intelligent design, of an eye that contains only some of the components that seem essential to a fully functional organ that still provides value for its host. Speaking of which, do you know how cool the eyes of an octopus are? There's a great diagram on Wikipedia that compares vertebrate eyes and cephalopod eyes. Cephalopods being the set of octopods and squid and cuttlefish, for example. So the way that cephalopod eyes grow has the retina in front of the nerve fibres, as opposed to us vertebrates, where the retina is behind the nerve fibres. This has a significant advantage because it means that there's no spot on the back of the retina where the nerve fibres have to bundle up and in order to reach the optic nerve. They don't have a blind spot like we do. Also, like squid, octopods can differentiate the polarization of light, which is really cool. I believe sheep and goats can do that too. Oh, and also, octopods' pupils in their eyes automatically rotate to stay horizontal, even when they're a different way up. So yes, octopus eyes, amazing things. There's actually some debate about whether or not octopods and other cephalopods' eyes evolved from a shared ancestor with vertebrates, or whether they're an example of convergent evolution. The arguments for both are really interesting, and Wikipedia's got a good summary of them, which is worth a look. Of course, our friend the blind cirrot octopus is mostly blind, very different from other octopods, but also we know so little about it. We don't know what it eats. We think it probably eats whole shellfish. We don't know how it breeds. We don't know how commonplace it is. We don't know whether its environment is under threat. All we really know is it's a freaky looking thing from way down deep. And thank you, Wikipedia, for telling me about this strange beast. I wonder what you'll share with me tomorrow. Once again, this episode of my podcast was based on a blog post which you can find on danq.me. If you enjoyed it, leave a comment there or drop me an email on podcast@danq.me. And as always, Dan Q for listening. Dan Q very much.